Welcome back to Gospelogian, where we're going to get practical gospel-centered theology for everybody. Today we are going to examine what actually happened on the cross. And amazingly, there's lots of different theories about that, some of them kind of wild. But we're going to look at them, and I've actually ranked them for you, from worst to best. So watch all the way to the end so you don't miss out on what I believe is the best atonement theory that best accounts for all the biblical data that we have available to us. But let's start off with number one, the worst one. In fact, probably the one that is the most damaging to Christianity today, and this is theory number one, the moral influence theory. One of the earliest theories for the atonement, and it shows up in church history pretty early. It teaches that Jesus Christ came and died in order to bring about a positive change to humanity. So the death of Christ is understood as a catalyst to reform society, inspiring men and women to follow his example and live good moral lives of love. And in this theory, the Holy Spirit comes to help Christians produce a moral change. This in turn creates a strong emphasis on free will as the human response to follow Jesus' example. This completely avoids all the difficult topics. And so when you're evaluating atonement theories, one of the things you've got to look for is how well does this handle all the things in the Bible that atonement theory really is going to have to handle, like mankind is sinners, so does this address my sin? Moral influence doesn't really address my sin. What about the wrath of God, where God's not okay with sin? What about people that have done legit evil that need to be punished? What about justice? Moral influence theory ignores all of those things in favor for cafeteria style theology. Pick what you want, just do some good stuff and we're all fine. I hate this one. It's terrible. Worst one. Let's move on to number two, the scapegoat theory. Scapegoat is considered to be a form of non-violent atonement, and I don't know how you get around the fact that the cross was a violent death, but this says that the atonement was non-violent. In fact, that Jesus is not really a sacrifice for sin, he's just a victim. There's some philosophical concepts that go along with this. So Jesus is killed by a violent crowd. The violent crowd kills him because they believe he's guilty, but Jesus is proven innocent as the Son of God, therefore the crowd is really guilty. And so basically the scapegoat theory says the crowd should never have killed him, and that was just really bad of them, and so technically the crowd is guilty for the death of Jesus. He was just a victim of a bad day. The Son of God doesn't fall victim to any of our schemes and plans, okay? The day that God gets trumped by a group of rabble-rousers on earth, that's crazy. Jesus said, I lay down my life and no one can take it from me. So the scapegoat theory really doesn't work. That's why it was number two. But let's move into number three. And this is actually... Okay, so for the Catholics out there, I'm sorry, I really hate this theory, and it kind of has its origins in the Catholic Church. This theory is the silliest of all theories. So some of them are bad and damaging and stupid and terrible. This one is the most silly one. So here's the ransom theory. Essentially, this theory claims that Adam and Eve sold humanity over to the devil at the time of the fall. Hence, justice requires that God pays the devil a ransom, for the devil did not realize that Christ could not be held in the bonds of death. Once the devil accepted Christ's death as a ransom, this theory concludes that justice was satisfied and God was able to free us from Satan's grip. Redemption in this theory means to buy back or purchase the human race from the devil. The problem with this theory is that the devil's God, and God owes him a debt? This is ridiculous. This is purported by the same kind of people that have a cartoonology version of hell, where they think the devil maybe owns hell. Lots of people think devil owns hell. You know, he doesn't own it. It's like a place designed for his torment and destruction, but whatever. Humanity was never sold. It was never up for sale. God has always been the potter, and we have always been the clay. And the devil, if you'll look at the book of Job, has to go by the book with God. If God doesn't let the devil do something, the devil can't do something. So the ransom theory is the silliest. It is the wildest one. It has the least biblical backing. Some of these don't have any biblical backing, but, you know, whatever. All right, next we get into Christus Victor. Now, this theory, I see you, Christus Victor. I don't subscribe to this theory, but in church history, it was pretty prominent, and there are some theologians that went with this theory. I can't go with them for reasons I'll show you, but classically considered the dominant one in most of church history, specifically in the Catholic Church prior to the Protestant Reformation. In this theory, Jesus Christ dies in order to defeat the powers of evil, such as sin, death, and the devil, in order to free mankind from the bondage. This is related to your ransom view, with the difference being God doesn't pay the devil anything. Within the Christus Victor framework, the cross does not pay off anyone, it just defeats the devil, thereby setting us free. So it's real close to the ransom theory, but it doesn't elevate the devil to where he's like a creditor of God. So that's good. It is prominent in church history. There are some people that subscribe to this, but it really doesn't account for some very important biblical data that we'll get to in a minute. Let's talk about Anselm's satisfaction theory. This is starting to get a lot closer to where we want to be. In the 12th century, Anselm of Canterbury proposed a satisfaction theory for the atonement. And this theory, Jesus Christ's death, is understood as a death to satisfy the justice of God. This is good. We're starting to see God as a just God who's not just going to be cool with corruption getting off the hook all the time. So satisfaction here means that there's restitution, the mending of what was broken, the paying back of a debt. In this theory, Anselm emphasizes the justice of God and claims that sin is an injustice that must be balanced. Anselm's satisfaction theory says essentially that Jesus Christ died in order to pay back the injustice of human sin and satisfy the justice of God. The reason this is getting better is it's starting to deal with the fact that sinners have a problem with a holy God, and God is just. The old illustration holds. If somebody kills your wife and family, and the judge says, listen, man, I know you killed this guy's wife and family, but you've really done a lot of good work, so it was only one bad thing. I'm going to let you off free because I'm a loving judge. That's a corrupt judge, not a loving judge, and God is not a corrupt judge. He's a loving God, but he's also just, and that's very important. And we're getting closer to dealing with that in the satisfaction theory. Let's talk about the governmental theory. This is a variation on the one that is the best accounting for the biblical data. This is notable with the Methodists, although many Methodist churches nowadays don't even hold to it, but this is really where their history is. And the governmental theory, Jesus Christ doesn't take the punishment for us. He just takes a punishment. So Jesus Christ dies on the cross, and that demonstrates God's displeasure towards sin. He died to display God's wrath against sin and the high price which must be paid, but not to specifically satisfy that particular wrath. What I really hate about this theory is it turns God into some sort of tyrant that just makes Jesus an example. And so Jesus isn't actually specifically fixing my problem with God, but now the governmental theory says, well, I've been shown the displeasure of God. But here we get to number 7, and this theory is got the gospel all over it, the penal substitution theory. Penal meaning punishment, substitution meaning instead of you and me. This is where we can say Jesus took my place on the cross. I should have been there, but he took that. God poured out his wrath on him. I deserve that wrath, and now Jesus sets me free through salvation. Penal substitution is a development of, ding, 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 the Reformation. Gotta love the Reformation if you're on this channel. The Reformers, specifically Calvin and Luther, took Anselm's satisfaction theory and then they modified it. They added the legal framework to, or maybe theologians call this forensic framework, to this notion, and they see the cross as a satisfaction of God's justice and wrath. The result is that penal substitution, Jesus Christ dies to satisfy God's wrath against human sin. Jesus is punished in the place of sinners in order to satisfy the justice of God and the legal demand of God to punish sin. In the light of Jesus' death, God can now forgive the sinner because Jesus Christ has been punished in the place of the sinner, in this way meeting the retributive requirements of God's justice. This legal balancing of the ledgers is at the heart of the theory, which claims that Jesus died for legal satisfaction. This is the best theory, that Jesus Christ took the punishment I heaped on myself through my sin. He substituted himself for me. This is the theory that exalts Christ the most. It places the cross as the highest value. In every other theory, the cross is an add-on to my salvation. In this theory, the cross is central. I can't have salvation without the cross. And it displays Jesus' specific great love for his sheep. Jesus is up there on a cross, dying for people that he knows. He's laying down his life. He's satisfying the justice and the wrath of God, taking my place on the cross so that I can be restored, and he imputes his righteousness to me so that I can now stand before God. I hope that this is helping you become a better theologian. Go ahead and hit that like, subscribe button, and check out another video on my channel while you're here.